Welcome to Mainland, your local regional television station, coming to you from the Nelson and Tasman region. In today's news, significant cold outbreak coats Nelson Hills with snow, government to invest in refugee settlement, Labour MP says housing affordability worsening, and the best from Rock West Regional through to the next stage. The weekend's heavy rain over the ranges of Buller and Western Nelson has now eased, and the high winds have died down, but a significant cold outbreak has brought snow to the hills around the region. There's been widespread road closures throughout the South Island, including the Buller Gorge Road and Arthurs and Haast passes. Heavy snow has continued to fall in both areas. Both Arthurs Pass and Haast Pass remained closed to all traffic on Sunday night, with heavy rain and snow continuing to fall in both areas. The New Zealand Transport Agency's Senior Network Manager, Mark Pinner, says State Highway 6 through Haast Pass has been closed all day on Sunday, with the area having been blanketed in snow. NZTA were to review the situation on Monday. Mark Pinner said while snow had closed the Haast Pass on Sunday, if they can clear it, they still need to check the Diana Falls slip for any movement, given the area has been pounded by heavy rain, snow and wind since Friday. He says at Arthurs Pass, the contractors have removed around 30,000 tonnes of rock and material which fell onto State Highway 73 on Friday, about 1 kilometre west of the Otira township, and it was expected they would be able to open up access between Jackson and Arthurs Pass late Monday afternoon. The budget 2014 will see the government invest $5.6 million to boost the resettlement of refugees. Immigration Minister Michael Woodhouse says the spending spread over the next 4 years will help newly arrived quota refugees during their first 12 months. All quota refugees spend their first 6 weeks at the Mangere Refugee Resettlement Centre before being resettled in 5 regions throughout New Zealand: Auckland, Waikato, Manawatu, Wellington and Nelson. Core funding for national resettlement planning and supportive services for quota refugees has remained the same level of $7.6 million a year since 2004-2005. He says we have an enviable reputation internationally for their work in resettling refugees from the world's trouble spots, and this extra money will ensure the refugees will continue to get the excellent level of help and support they need to settle in their new country. He says the extra money will pay for improved access to services in the community and a subsidised Learn and Drive program for working age refugees to help them get into work. He says one of the main goals of the whole of government refugee resettlement strategy is increasing the number of refugees in paid employment, and these sorts of initiatives will help deliver better outcomes for refugees. Chrissy Small caught up with Marianne Street this week over housing affordability in Nelson.
Marianne Street, it's lovely to be able to talk to you. I know you have a busy time this week, so we've managed to grab you while you're not in Parliament. Now this Roost Home Loan Affordability Report of the 20th of May, it says the median house price in Nelson in April was $370,000. Now the price in April 2013 was $339,000. Now it puts the annual growth at 9.1%, and in your email to us, you said 5 years ago the median price was $295,500. Now this is no good for trying to buy homes in Nelson. What's your answer to these latest figures on the affordability of housing in the region?
Well, I think this has been a very serious report from Roost, who's put out this home loan affordability report just last week, as you say. What it means is that it's getting harder and harder for a person to buy a house in Nelson. So the median price, as you said, in April was $370,000, and that is 9.1% up on last year. And this is the kind of increase that no wage improvements can keep up with at the moment. So if you're an individual looking to buy a house in Nelson, it's spiralling further and further out of your reach. So the thing that is a real problem here is the gap that is created by low wages and high house prices, which means that people really struggle to get a loan. They've got to get a 20% deposit, and even coming up with that is impossible when you're living on the rents that are as high as they are in Nelson currently.
Do you think there's a policy existing that will address this issue for the Nelson Tasman region at this stage?
No, I don't think there is. I don't think the government does have a policy on housing affordability. They talk about it as a problem for Auckland. And yes, it is a problem for Auckland, but Nelson is number 5 in the country of the least affordable places to live. We've got Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch, Queenstown and Nelson. In fact, Queenstown is the most expensive place to buy a house, the most unaffordable. And there are some parts of Wellington that are fine and would be perfectly affordable, and other parts like Porirua and Wellington City, which are not. But Nelson is right up there, and it is getting worse. Now, we need really active policies that can encourage young people and young families to get into their first home as owners of their first home, and there is nothing that the government is doing to improve that. Simply taking some tariffs off building products and reducing the cost of building a house by $3,500 as in this year's budget is not going to touch the people who are just wanting a loan to buy an already existing house. They're not in a position to build their own house. They just want to buy an already existing one. So that's no use to them. The kind of accord that they've got with the Auckland City Council is maybe fine for there, but it's not addressing housing affordability in the minister's own backyard.
Now, we don't just have the housing affordability for purchasing, but we have the rental situation, plus we seem to have a rental shortage. Now, in the latest Housing New Zealand report, we could see state housing numbers slashed in Nelson by 186 houses and Tasman 48 houses over the next 10-year period. Why would this government entity be putting out such a report when there is clearly a housing shortage for low-income housing?
Well, because they are separating out two things. They're separating out the provision of social housing, which they're running away from at 100 miles an hour. So they are trying to divest themselves of the responsibility for providing housing for our most vulnerable people. They are cutting back on Housing New Zealand houses here because they say we don't have the need for low-income housing that there is in other parts of the country. That's nonsense. We've got people on low incomes here who are living in seriously substandard conditions. They just need to get out more and have a look around at what's available. Secondly, as you say, the rents are going up, and rents are going up because house prices are going up. And landlords watch the value of land and property, and they adjust their rents accordingly, and that makes it impossible for people to keeping up is hard enough. Getting ahead enough to raise a deposit becomes harder in those circumstances. Housing New Zealand ought to be able to shift people who are on market rents in Nelson into private housing, but they're having trouble doing that and freeing up other houses for people with lower incomes. And now, with the reduction of state housing, it's completely going to cripple Housing New Zealand's ability to respond to housing need. Need is getting greater. Housing New Zealand's capacity to meet it is getting smaller. That's a recipe for disaster.
Well, now, Marion, when these assets are liquidated, now there's obviously going to be some cash floating around Housing New Zealand. What are they going to do with their money?
Well, I think I've heard the Minister say that they will put that money into building more houses, but that's not been a commitment in the Nelson region. They are looking to put more into Auckland, and clearly that is where the greatest need is, especially in South Auckland. But it is such a short-sighted measure. People in Nelson are not going to up sticks and go to South Auckland to look for a job and simply to become another urgent statistic in a South Auckland waiting list. They want to stay here. They want to be able to have adequate housing here, and the Minister just isn't casting the net wide enough in terms of policy. In other words, if these state houses are going to be sold, what is the commitment to replacing them? Is the money going to go back into rebuilds in Nelson? Not that I've heard. I've only heard that they're looking to provide more houses in Auckland. Well, that's not good enough, because not everybody lives in Auckland.
No. Now, you were talking about landlords putting up rents because of the rise in the marketplace of housing values. I believe that this isn't just, it's also the management companies, some of the real estate management companies that are actually telling the landlords that it's time for a rent rise. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think that one of the things that that Labor is putting forward for the next election is a comprehensive capital gains tax. And that will discourage speculating landlords. Of course, there are, ma and pa landlords in Nelson who have got a second property as a buffer against their retirement, and in case superannuation isn't adequate for them. And I can understand that. A lot of people have done that because that is the way the tax system has been structured. It incentivises people to put their money into rental properties. In the case of speculating purchasers, however, those who buy up 4 or 5 or 6 properties simply to make a capital gain, then a capital gains tax begins to become very fair. So we can see that people who earn income off inflated house prices and pay no income tax on that are really milking the system. It's not illegal. It should be, in our view. And that will have a dampening effect on the value of houses. It will have a dampening effect. It won't stop house prices going up a bit, but having a capital gains tax in place will stop the speculative buying that drives up the price of houses. That will then cause rents to stabilise, because if the land value is not rising, the property value is not escalating at the rate that it is, then those companies you're talking about won't be in such a strong position to say to landlords, well, you better put your rents up because your property's actually worth much more than that. Your property that was worth $339,000 last year is now worth $370,000. So you can put your rents up, put them up another $20 a week, and you'll be sweet. That'll be great. I think a capital gains tax will slow that market down and therefore will contribute to stabilising rents.
Great. Marianne Street, thank you very much for your time today.
The New Zealand Lottery Grants Board has granted the Abel Tasman Birdsong Trust $200,000 to control invasive weeds in Abel Tasman National Park. The funding is part of a $300,000 two-year program to be project managed by the Abel Tasman Birdsong Trust. The program is based on a comprehensive weed management plan commissioned by Project Jan Zoon in 2012. Chair of the Abel Tasman Birdsong Trust, Kim McGlashan, says the weed management plan identifies 113 different weed species in the project area, many of which present serious ecological threats. He says in order for the process of ecological recovery to continue, it's absolutely vital that some active management is undertaken to ensure that the invasive weed species are not allowed to dominate and suppress native forest regeneration. He says by removing the weeds, the native flora will have the opportunity to flourish again, ultimately providing food for native birds and insects. The key targets for control range from climbing vines such as old man's beard and banana passion fruit that are establishing from outside the park, to garden escapes such as Greenvillia, periwinkle and ivy that have spread from historic plantings along the Abel Tasman coastline. The Abel Tasman Birdsong Trust has contracted R&D Environment Limited to manage the weed control program. And finally, Smoke-Free Rockwest Nelson Regional Final was held at the Theatre Royal last Friday and was a sellout with more than 500 people attending the evening's competition. 10 bands along with 2 soloists played to an enthusiastic crowd of teenagers and parents who were there to cheer on their favourite performers. The event's judges, Flip Greater and Nelson's Ryan Berry, had a challenging evening, sorting the best winning band and solo artists from the talented lineup that the night's menu of music presented, with all presenting 2 of their original songs on the night. The main prize categories on the evening were first and second place in the band section, giving the 2 chosen bands the opportunity to be selected to go through to the national finals, which would firstly see each having to send in video footage of their original music that will be judged in August leading up to the national final. The evening's winners of both band and duo solo won musical gear from associate sponsors New Zealand Rock Shops, along with the opportunity to gain selection for the national final at Auckland's Q Theatre on Saturday the 27th of September. Other categories included People's Choice Award, APRA Lyric Award, Lowdown Best Song, the Mains Musicianship Award and the Smoke-Free Award for Women's Musicianship. The national finals judging is done from a pool of 50 to 60 bands that also includes Rock Shop's Second Chance, an opening for established bands playing regular gigs who don't feel they played their best on the night. The 2 solo performers from our region will now go through the same process and move ahead to the national final. The winning band hailed from both Garran College and Nelson College. Mainland TV caught the evening's action where the winners were announced.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, first place in the band category, winning prizes from the New Zealand Rock Shop and the opportunity to be selected as national finalists tonight goes to Garran College. Second place in the band category tonight goes to, from Nelson College and Waimea College, Fire Without Birds!
What you say, I cannot hear.
category. Tonight goes to, from Garran College, Gabriella Atkinson. Choice Text Award. This is the band that you voted for. Tonight, this goes to, from Nelson College for Girls, Z Shore.
After the break, we'll bring you the latest weather update and some events and happenings coming up from around the region.